The wall inside ran a steam, the wall outside ran a road. Out of the wall a man walked, within the wall a lass laughed. Over old trees, wreathed with rotten vines, fly evening crowds. Under a small bridge, near a cottage, a stream flows. On ancient road in the west wind, a lean horse goes. Deep, deep the courtyard, where he is, so deep, it's veiled by smoke like willows, heap on heap, by curtain on curtain, and screen on screen. Ancient Chinese poets like to rely on the buildings in scenery to create an atmosphere as a foil to express feelings and deliver messages. Walled compounds, flowing water and stone arch bridges, and enclosed courtyards, these are all the typical building structures that would immediately call forth traditional Chinese architecture. In the previous section, we looked through the diversified styles of Chinese residence. In this section, it is time to generalize some of the features and components commonly seen in the architectures of ancient China. Then, we could map out a big picture of traditional Chinese architecture. As one of 4 ancient civilized countries in the world, China has created a unique and outstanding traditional culture. China's architectural art is a particularly beautiful branch in the tree of Chinese civilization. During its long development, it gradually forms into a style that features timberwork, the buildings in groups with varied layouts, the appealing designs rife with decorations, and the architectural thoughts deeply rooted in Chinese philosophical ideologies. First, timberwork as the main structure. The most significant characteristic of Chinese architecture is the use of timber framework. Wood is always preferred rather than stone. As far back in the past, most of the country was covered by forests. It is natural for people to think of something available nearby for construction. Considering the fact that wood is relatively easier to be collected, transported, stored, and moved around in the building process, all people need to do is plant trees in their backyard and wait for them to grow into the most cost-effective building materials. Wooden posts, beams, lintels, and joists usually make up the framework of a building. The joints between wooden parts are made to interlock using mortises and tenons. The wooden framework thus demonstrates 2 advantages. First, the properties of wood and the way they are connected render this frame structure more elastic. As a result, the buildings could be protected from earthquake damage. Next, when the timberwork bears the weight of the whole house, the walls function more flexibly. This is unique to China. As a famous saying goes, Chinese houses will still stand when their walls collapse. Of course, the disadvantages are evident. They're easy to catch fire and more vulnerable to termite damage and corrosion, so that masonry structures are not rare and bronze could also be used. Second, buildings in groups with varied layouts. The layout of a building complex is also unique to China. Limited by the size of timber, a single building cannot be as large and spacious as the stone or brick building. So, traditional Chinese architectures are likely to be in groups, like the 四合院 courtyard dwellings. The central main building is usually surrounded by single buildings like wing rooms, gallery verandas, and fence walls to comprise a courtyard. Distinct courtyards and buildings could then be further arranged to form grander architectural complex. The general layouts usually fall into two types: symmetrical structure and free combination. The symmetrical configuration could be applied to important complexes like palaces, temples, government buildings, or residences of administrators and officials, where, strictly following a hierarchical order, the main structures would be located along the central axis, while compact compositions of less important structures to the left and right. Folk houses and gardens, on the other hand, take on a more delicate look. A courtyard could be like a fine headscroll of painting, which should be unfolded little by little. The scenery is different in each courtyard. Even in moving several steps within the courtyard, you will be surprised at the changing of prospects. The whole building would carefully fit into the surrounding environment landscaping in the pursuit of natural, easy, reserved, and profound aesthetic characters. Third, appealing designs rife with decorations. Chinese architecture boasts graceful designs and a dazzling display of ingenious decorative crafts, among which carvings and paintings are the most popular. No wonder a richly ornamented building would often be defined by carved beams and painted rafters. To spread the weight of the roof on the supporting wooden posts, 斗拱, a feat achieved by inserting an intricate system of brackets between the top of a column and a crossbeam, was created as a typical Chinese building structure. 斗拱 enables the roof to project beyond the walls of the building, so as to protect the wooden columns and their bases from deterioration by exposure to rain. Besides, the bracket structure itself makes a unique adornment. At the same time, carvings could appear on wood, brick, and stone, richly themed with lifelike characters, auspicious plants and animals, well-known historical stories, as well as tasteful verses. As is mentioned above, the buildings in old times are mostly comprised of timber work. The specialty of wood requires antisepsis, since the copper in paint makes it moisture-proof, anti-weathering, non-stripping, and helps keep termites away. Colored painting becomes one of China's distinguished architectural decorations. On the outside, Chinese buildings also use bright colors. An imperial construction would feature vermilion paint, applied to pillars and balustrades, yellow for glazed roof tiles, and green for decorative parts such as the brackets under the eaves. Refined carvings and colorful paintings combined reflect Chinese people's exquisite craftsmanship and keen imagination. Fourth, architectural thoughts deeply rooted in Chinese philosophical ideologies. Greatly affected by Taoism, traditional Chinese architectures carry the philosophical thought in pursuit of a harmonious unity of man and nature. Therefore, they gave priority to properly fitting into the surroundings. Be it a palace, a temple, a folk house, a private garden, or a mausoleum. The landform, the climate, and vegetation would provide references in architectural designs when feng shui, literally translated as wind water, plays a crucial guiding role. Feng shui is a method traditionally used in the site selection and construction of dwellings, cities, and tombs, etc. Although it is a huge and complicated thinking system, there are several major principles usually applied, which involves picking up places with lots of qi, a universal term of energy, investigating geographical features with a focus on good water environment and favorable geology, positioning buildings southward, leaning against mountains and facing rivers. In a word, feng shui helps direct to auspicious location and layout that are supposed to bring good luck for people living there. Although rich in history, some feng shui theories cannot be explained by contemporary science. Thus, some consider it only a belief or even superstition. However, supporters think that it is an interdisciplinary branch concerning geophysics, hydrogeology, meteorology, architecture, and ecology. Whatever side one is on, the critical role that feng shui has played in ancient Chinese architecture and China's customs cannot be neglected. Timberwork as the main structure, buildings in groups with varied layouts, appealing designs rife with decorations, and architectural thoughts deeply rooted in Chinese philosophical ideologies. These four major characteristics are typically embodied in specific traditional Chinese building components, among which are some very familiar terms: ting, tai, lou, ge. But can you really tell the differences between lou and ge? Why is pavilion everywhere? Next, we will try to discriminate these unique architectural categories in China. Pavilion, or specifically airy pavilion, it's no exaggeration to say that in China, where there is a garden, there is a pavilion. Pavilion is built normally either of wood, stone, or bamboo with any of several shapes: square, triangle, hexagon, octagon, a 5-petal flower, a fan, and more. The most common type is the airy pavilion, supported only by columns without walls on all sides. In parks or some scenic places, airy pavilions could be built on slopes to command the panorama or lie by the pond to create intriguing waterside images. Pavilions also serve diverse purposes. The wayside pavilion is called liangqing or cooling kiosk to provide a resting place for weary wayfarers. The stilly pavilion shelters a stone tablet for the engraved record of an important event. Occasionally, you will find two pavilions standing side by side, like twins. In modern times, kiosks put on different looks, ranging from postal stores, newsstands, or photographers' sheds for snapshot services. Amid countless airy pavilions all over the country, several managed to leave enduring names: the Pavilion of the Old Drunkard and Orchard Pavilion, not for any distinguished design nor the scenery that comes with them, but for the namesake literary masterpieces accomplished there. The governor, coming here with his friends, often gets tipsy after a little drinking, and since he is the most advanced in years, he calls himself the old drunkard. He delights less in drinking than in the hills and streams, taking pleasure in them and expressing the feeling in his heart through drinking. Here gathered all the illustrious persons and assembled both the old and the young. Here are tall mountains and majestic peaks, trees with thick foliage and tall bamboos. Here also clear streams and gurgling rapids, catching one's eye from the right and left. We group ourselves in order, sitting by the waterside and drinking in succession from a cup floating down the curving stream, and although there is no music from string and woodwind instruments, yet with alternate singing and drinking, we are well disposed to thoroughly enjoy a quiet, intimate conversation. The timeless appeal of both essays enable the pavilions to shoot to fame with an account of the graceful surroundings and, most importantly, the great writer's perceptions of life while lingering there. Many ancient Chinese architectures win their reputations this way, and most of the time it is the story around the building that livens it up and makes it truly captivating. Terrace. Tai is an ancient architectural structure, usually an elevated terrace with a flat top. Built of earth, stone, and surfaced with brick, they are mostly set high as a belvedere from which to look into the distance. This feature allows terrace to serve different practical purposes, either for sightseeing or for military use, an observatory on guard, or a beacon tower to transmit urgent information in emergency. In other cases, it can be used as a stand to watch ancient dramas or supervise military drill. However, many of the well-known ancient terraces today are not just the bare platforms. Rather, they have some palatial halls built on top. Speaking of terrace, we can only glimpse into the grace of some household names from ancient poetry, as they leave no relics but their enthralling images for the later generations to crave for. The nominally glorious yet desolate Phoenix Terrace. On Phoenix Terrace, once phoenixes came to sing. The birds are gone, but still roll on the river's waves. And the towering and grand bronze Sparrow Terrace stand the imposing gates that the high watchtowers on both sides float in the air. Erect the magnificent roofs that the lofty pavilions extend all the way to the west of the city. Storied buildings. When talking about Lou, ancient Chinese usually refer to any buildings of 2 or more stories with a horizontal main ridge. Initially as layered houses, folk dwellings would put the owner's study or bedroom upstairs for privacy, while the more magnificent ones built in gardens or at scenic spots are for the appreciation of the distant scenery, as there are not many high buildings in the past to obstruct the view. In this case, it could also be regarded as a tower. The art of constructing tall buildings was already highly developed in China during ancient times. Many multi-storied towers of complex structure have wholly wood frameworks fixed together with dogong brackets and without even a single piece of metal. Ancient cities usually have bell and drum towers. usually palatial buildings with four-slope, double-caved glazed roofs, or round verandas and colored and carved dogong brackets, supporting the overhanging eaves. They house a big bell or drum used to toll hours. Then, the local officials would open the city gates at the toll of the bell early in the morning and close them with the strike of the drum in the evening, the so-called morning bell and evening drum. Still, many eminent storied buildings are celebrated for their play in great literary works, among which the most frequented being the Yellow Crane Tower, the Stork Tower, and the Yueyang Tower. Reading the poetic lines, you could in your mind picture the distinct images of these towers and identify with the poets against specific backdrops. The sage on Yellow Crane was gone amid clouds white. To what avail is Yellow Crane Tower left here? Once gone, the Yellow Crane will never unearth a light. Only white clouds still float in vain from year to year. The view of 1,000 li to command. Up a story higher, thou shouldst now go. Sometimes mist and clouds are completely dissipated, and the moonlight is freely streaming down, spilling golden lights on the lake surface. When there's no wind, quiet shadow of the moon is like a jade submerged in the water. Fishermen's songs are echoing each other so that fun should never end. At this time, climbing the Yueyang Tower, people should be completely relaxed and happy to disregard all fevers or humiliations, and raise wine bowls in the wind, beaming with joy. Storied Pavilion. The Chinese Ge is similar to Lou in that both buildings are of 2 or more stories. The difference lies in the fact that Ge has a door and windows only on the front side, with solid walls on all the other 3 sides. Moreover, Ge is usually enclosed by wooden balustrades, or decorated with boards all around. Such a structure makes it possible the storage, particularly in the storied pavilion, of important articles and documents, keeping valuable books and works of painting and calligraphy. In the temple building complex, a storied pavilion is more often than not a scripture library for the depository of Buddhist classics. Of course, some of them are notably erected for enjoying the sights, like airy pavilions, terraces, or towers. In this case, they also function as towers. Routinely, we quote here the most renowned poetic lines as a tribute to Teng Huang Pavilion, or the Tower of Prince Teng, a quite conventional storied architecture. It is the 9th month and the late autumn season. Rain puddles have drifted up while cool water ponds are clear. Mist and light distill while sunset paints mountains purple. Riding a horse carriage on the high road in the mountains, I took in sceneries amidst rugged peaks. By the long beach where the prince had lived, I found the heavenly old tower. Cascades of green cliffs rise above the highest clouds. Soaring red structure hangs over the invisible ground. Cranes and ducks roam the sandbars around the winding islets. Elegant halls and mansions nest on the rolling hills. By the riverbank, the Tower of Prince Teng was built high. Jade-clad dancers and Simurgh singers have bidden goodbye. over painted beams, morning clouds from south marsh glide, pearl curtains splashed by evening mountain rain from outside. Airy pavilions, terraces, storied buildings and storied pavilions. We've only cast a glance at a tip of iceberg for the talk on traditional Chinese architecture. But one thing is clear. In the hands of industrious and intelligent laboring people, China is never short of architectural wonders in its history. Yan, what are some other types of conventional buildings you can name distinctive to China, and the specific constructions most representative in that category? Any literary masterpieces that carry them to withstand the test of time? Let's put heads together and come up with this inclusive catalog of traditional Chinese architecture.